really lucky to have their partnership. If you hadn't had a chance to connect with Venkat and the AIM Financials team, I highly recommend you do, because the work that they're doing, not only on the wealth management side, but also in the hotel industry and building hotels with unique materials has been is just outstanding. So with that, Venkat, I'd like to bring you up on stage to introduce our panel with Shilpa and Scott Harper. Thank you.
Hi everyone, good afternoon, and thank you to the Chamber, Satish and Kamal for having me here today. And as Kamal introduced, my name is Venkat Shashank. I'm the CEO of AIM Financials and Cashflow Capital, Venture Capital, and also owner of Steel IQ. It's my pleasure to introduce this afternoon's keynote discussion featuring Scott Harper, moderated by Shilpa Singh. Scott is the Dallas-based entrepreneur and operator, best known as the co-founder and former CEO of Dialexa, which he scaled from a bootstrap startup all the way to a 350-person company before its acquisition by IBM in 2022. Under his leadership, Dialexa worked with world-class organizations including Toyota, Boston Consulting Group, Topgolf, Deloitte, and many more conglomerates. He's a recipient of the prestigious EY Entrepreneur of the Year awardee. And moderating today's discussion is Shilpa Singh, a sales leader at Google Cloud with more than 15 years of experience working with billion-dollar accounts, helping Fortune 100 companies transform through data and AI. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Scott Harper and Shilpa Singh. Thank you.
All right, we'll get started. Scott, welcome. It's great to see you.
Thank you very much for having me.
So quickly, for folks who weren't here before, 14 years ago, Scott Harper co-founded Dialexa over a little beer with simple but a radical premise. Every company is going to become a technology company, and the ones that win are going to do that by building proprietary custom tech. It's a great topic for today in the AI world. He grew Dialexa from a Greece startup to an absolute powerhouse, later acquired by IBM. He recently stepped down as the CEO, meaning he's freshly detached from the daily corporate grind and ready to give back some real, unfiltered truth about where technology is heading. Scott, it's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the intro.
All right, so we'll dive quickly into the AI noise. My first question, Scott, Dialex's entire thesis was that you don't buy by buying off-the-shelf software, you win by building custom tech that differentiates your business. Right now, every company is plugging into models like OpenAI, Anthropic or Google Gemini via basic API. If everyone's renting this exact same brain, how do you actually build a proprietary AI moat?
So yeah, I think at Dialexa, we started, my business partner and I started, Mark Hagar started that. We came out of the SaaS world, and the big thing that we felt was going to really be game changing for every business was that every business was a technology company at that point. That was basically a really strong thesis, and you had to understand what that meant, right? And for us, we looked at the ways technology could differentiate businesses and provide a real competitive advantage, not just using technology. So we didn't want to come and just install off-the-shelf software that everybody else had. There's a sense in building a proprietary email system or your CRM or something like that. We wanted to look at what people could do with technology that would actually move the needle for them and help them win in their category, right? So I think today it's not about like, you know, whether it's like customer off the shelf, now it's a matter of like, you know, where a customer lives in today's age, right? And it's, if you're looking, a lot of people are looking at which model do I use, things like that. You know, really everything we're building or I'm looking at now, the models are really interchangeable. These models are these frontier labs, they're leapfrogging each other, you know, every, you know, few months, right? So like if you're trying to differentiate based on which model you pick, you've already lost. So it's not really about, you know, like let's say that that's the engine of the car, right? Like you're really going to win based on, you know, building the car and your data is rocket fuel, right? So, you know, you have to think about where you win in the age of AI. It's not around model selection. Different models better different things, and that's going to change over time. You have to, you know, really focus on, you know, where you differentiate. You're going to differentiate your data, right? You know, no matter how good Anthropic or, you know, OpenAI, any of those guys are like, they're not going to have, let's say, AT&T's data, right? All this historical data in the telco and telco industry, customer data, you know, all the different, you know, layers of your data stack that is knowledge, right? And there's wisdom within that knowledge that an AI model can help you get out. And I think that's really where you have to focus is around like, you know, how do you build something in both that data layer, the application layer, and then the UI layer or something, right? So, you know, I think, you know, really today, the way that you differentiate is in some ways very different, in some ways it's the same, right? Your customer relationships is still going to be one of the hardest things to replace, right? Somebody could build, I mean, anybody could go out and hire somebody to build a clone of Instagram, but that's not going to make you Instagram, right? So you still have to figure out how do you gather an audience, how do you get customers. But I think that, you know, a big challenge in today's world, for especially the larger businesses, is not really even around like which AI, it's not really a tech challenge, it's a cultural challenge, and it's a mindset challenge, you know, like getting people to not only just adopt AI tooling, but thinking about the difference in using AI versus being an AI native business and what that means. There's a huge difference there, and that's frankly, you know, where most of the big companies are going to struggle is, you know, not just on like technology development, but it's around like how they use tech in their business, you know. If they let procurement drive decision making and they let legal filter through everything and would take 9 months to be able to kill a pilot, you know, doing all, and they let, you know, corporate bureaucracy and politics get in the way of progress, like, which these are things every big company.
Relationships, really tackling culture so they all kind of work together. That's really good. Moving to the second question. The question around how AI changes the underlying stack. You're an engineer by trade. Dialexa built its reputation on engineering solid custom software. Gen AI fundamentally changes how software behaves. So how does AI change the actual underlying stack?
Yeah, I mean, there's an answer here that really gets us down in like the technical weeds of like what the stack looks like, how that's different. I think probably the biggest change in the stack is that, you know, historically you built software in a very deterministic way, meaning that, you know, the same input gives the same output every time, right? You're really moving towards a more probabilistic type of model where the same input may yield different outputs each time. That's a very interesting thing. It's a little scary for people where, you know, especially if you look at like things like security or brand protection and things like that. People like predictability, and you know there is an observability too, right? Like I mean, in historical deterministic code, you could write test cases, you could observe, you know, everything. That's getting solved for now, you know, in AI, but you know, if you kind of go deeper in the origin stack, the way data and databases are structured now, like, is very different, you know, from a technical point, right? It's less about, you know, like keywords and more about vectorized databases and semantic search, which is just really more about like a database understanding like the meaning of something versus like a simple keyword search, right? You know, and then the other things that are going to change a lot is going to be on the application layer and the UI layer. If you think about just like ChatGPT and Claude, which I would think probably everybody in this room is using some of these tools at least, and you can have it, you know, gen up, you know, a different, you're going to have a chat interface and it's going to be more query driven versus like, you know, following a super rigid and structured UI. So there's a lot of things I think that change, and being able to feed things into this engine is going to be, it is just a fundamentally different way. In some ways, I think of like, we were doing a code review on some stuff the other day, and in some ways, like it looks like very traditional software, some of the things that we're building, and then others it's like randomly in this like block of code, you see like a prompt that you might feed into the model. So it's almost like you're plugging that in and leveraging the power of that versus like trying to build this, logic in your software there, and you're just gonna like, leverage this intelligence layer in a lot of ways.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit about separating viable startups from AI wrappers. You mentioned you're working on a few ideas. So when you look at startups right now, how do you instantly separate a fleeting AI wrapper, something like a Google or an OpenAI can render obsolete with their next update, from a viable standalone business?
I think we've all seen 100,000 people put out, hey, we built our new AI, we built our new AI, this custom AI, like every agency in the world, and no offense to the agency people in the room and the people selling to the CMOs and the office of the CMOs, like I think we all saw 100,000 like custom AIs come out of a marketing agency, and you're like, how the hell did these guys who really don't know much about building real technology, like build a custom AI? Really, it was a wrapper, right? You put some different interface, maybe you build something that looks like a skill in Claude now, like in there to make it talk like a marketer or something. And these are just kind of like thin veneers, and like there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, marketing people do what marketing people do. But I think the real, key to your question was, around how do you build a business and what does that look like? And, these things that are thin layers and veneers around something, a lot of them are more novelties. They're kind of super specific. They're more akin to like a feature than a product, and much less a company. And, I think that one simple litmus test, and the way I think about it is like, are we one update away from Claude rendering our whole product obsolete, which, I think in some ways that is like very predictable, and you can see the arc of that and how that can happen very easily. And then in other ways, they come out with stuff and you're like, okay, that's a little different than what I thought. Okay, so the landscape is changing very rapidly, but I think, it's pretty easy to see these like thin, veneers on top of an AI right now. Like I think, if a model update makes your product stronger, it's probably like a good sign of a business. If it makes it weaker and it could just be obsolete, or some guy vibe coding it on Lovable could replace it in 20 minutes, that's probably more of a an AI wrapper type of situation. Maybe it doesn't mean it's not useful. It's just probably not a business, right? So business has to provide real commercial value. It has to solve real business problems. It has to be quantifiable in some way in terms of the outcome.
And maybe like double-clicking a little bit into that, like how have the fundamentals, like we've done Alexa before, how have the fundamentals of starting or building a startup, how have they changed in the AI world?
I think we're needing a lot less people. That's if you're doing it right. I think you're needing less people for certain things. I guess it's a different way to say that. We're able to move a lot faster. I think that where we focus, how we write code is different. There's, you read a lot of headlines around people saying that, nobody's going to write code anymore. It's like, you're kind of having the machine write the code, and like the best engineers know how to manipulate the machine to actually yield a useful output. And, production worthy stuff, commercial grade outputs out of these AIs instead of a bunch of, AI slop, right? So I think that not everybody can go out, not know how to code, and come in and be a 10x level engineer. I mean, there's a reason, a really interesting litmus test here. Everybody's having these debates of like, does AI make a 10x engineer a 1000x now, or does it take every average engineer and make him a 10x engineer? And I think a really simple litmus test around this is like, if you see these pay packages that some of these AI engineers are getting from the Metas of the world, and they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's like, clearly this has not become a commodity, at certain levels. And then there's certain tasks that totally become a commodity. And, I think that the real interesting conversation around the tech side of that question is more level engineers are doing is we're hiring more senior people, and they don't need the junior people underneath them anymore is probably the most noticeable difference. And then the speed at which we're able to move. Like those are really noticeable differences to me.
Yeah. I'm just kind of curious now, if you had to redo Alexa in that framework, how would you be thinking about that?
It's too soon to think about doing business. I think, well, services businesses right now, like, are at a very interesting juncture. So I imagine that some people out here in consulting businesses, and if you look at the stock prices of pretty much any consulting firm right now, like everybody is hurting a lot because depending on where you play, I don't want to go down the weeds of these business models too much, but they're struggling. Those businesses are really struggling in the market. There's a lot of uncertainty around it. And I think if I were starting it over again, probably in 2026 would not start with the same, thesis around how we go to market and what we sell to our customers. It would most certainly be something that is, AI native, something how do we leverage AI in our go-to-market. And I don't mean that by toolings, but in the offerings to, clients. And we talked a little bit before this around, there's this theme in market right now that a lot of the best AI companies and success stories are really going to be tech companies, but they're going to look like a service business, to the end customer. And I see that a lot. That's, without divulging too much, because I'm still kind of, under the radar on what I'm, thinking about next. But I think that there's a lot there. I think in the services world, like, you can really, old school consulting, we would call these like accelerators, right? Now we're basically like pre-building certain, pieces of a system that would basically enable you to take something you had built before or pre-build and then, deliver some outcome to a customer, way faster, better, cheaper than if somebody were starting from scratch each time. And I think AI really pours rocket fuel into kind of that theme if you think about, what it can do to accelerate outcomes. And I think that I would love to see more outcome-based types of pricing and deals in the consulting world, and I would definitely, that's a business model conversation really, but it's also a conversation on how you deliver value to the end customer. And I would be more focused on pricing and delivering outcomes than I would, how many people can I get billable on a project. I think a lot of that stuff is really being challenged, and is a lot of the types of work that are body shop type of work is going to go away.
Yeah.
It's going to be really challenging. It's going to have to really be rethought. It's going to be still a decent business for a very long time, because the good news for a lot of services businesses is that large enterprises are very slow to change. That's infuriating if you're a new product company trying to sell into a big business. When you've got something that's 100 times better than what they're doing today, that's extremely frustrating for everybody who's trying to sell into one of those environments. If you're entrenched in if you're an entrenched player, like, that's going to be music to your ears. You've got some time to figure it out. I could argue there's a lot of businesses that shouldn't exist now that are probably around for the next 20 or 30 years, purely because corporate bureaucracy and lock-in and bilateral purchasing agreements and a bunch of other things that I think really should probably be banned. That's a different conversation, a different day. Yeah, it's certainly, I would look at it differently for sure.
Right. So we'll talk a little bit about the talent spread. So we feel like Silicon Valley may be building the brains, but industrial and regional hubs like Texas, which are known for logistics, energy, aviation, healthcare, etc., are building the muscle and the nervous system, and the actual applications that change how the world works. How should a recent grad, a mid-career, and a prime career leader navigate their career in this AI world?
I think it depends. One, I think that, like, being AI relevant and being AI coming out, any of it, it's amazing work. You can learn so much from it. It's an incredible resource. It's free. Everybody should be, somewhat literate on this, especially a fresh grad. And, what I would do if I were coming out, I would, try to understand an industry that maybe I was interested in, because I think a lot of young people come out, and I remember feeling this way too, like, I don't know what I want to do, and it's like, somebody told me, they're like, you don't know what you want to do, how can anybody else know what you want to do? And, I think I was like, that's a very good point, I feel like a total idiot now, but, I think that, like, just figure out somewhere that you might be interested as a starting point. You may change 10 times, that's okay, it's just getting started, right? And I think I would come in with a point of view around, what's the current state of that industry? How might I bring a fresh set of eyes, to this industry? Let's say I go into oil and gas, for example. I'm going to really go and, do a deep dive around some of these different technologies and figure out, how do you, what's more relevant to these businesses or this industry? How can AI help that? Because really, if we go back to the Dialexa, conversation, which we've had to believe that every company was a technology company, right? And I still believe that. I think it's more true than ever. I think you really need to think of it like, hey, how can I be a tech company in the business of oil and gas, right? And that probably, holds true in some things in that industry, not others, but I think technology is highly applicable there. And so what I would want to be doing is to figure out, how can I bring something new to the table, a fresh new way of looking at things, right? You can build up your skill set and your value pretty quickly. Way quicker than ever. It's one of the most magical things about AI is you could literally open up Claude, as long as you can download it and be like, I don't know anything about Claude, teach me how to use it. It will literally teach you how to use it, itself. So, I would want to come in with a point of view, and I would want to understand, what industry it might want to be in. And then, maybe try to get close to a center of gravity, right? There's part of this is like where you can get an opportunity. I'm from a small town in Arkansas, for example. I'm like, that's probably not the best place for you to start a tech career to get started. I'm like, I'm going to move back to Fort Smith and, build a career in tech. You're probably not going to be terribly successful at that. I think, part of the question here always around geography is always, with technology. It's like, how do we become the next Silicon Valley and things like that. And the reality is nobody's going to be the next Silicon Valley, anytime soon anyway. COVID really challenged that, and it distributed tech, talent everywhere. Now with AI, kind of having this rapid, swing back. In some ways, it's made geography less relevant, but you've also seen a mass migration back to the kind of nucleus of Silicon Valley, like getting these kind of top, layers of talent. But they have absolutely come back more there. And so I think it depends on what you want to do. My brother, for example, has a PhD in machine learning. And so he's a real AI engineer down in the weeds of putting 100-page papers that I can't begin to wrap my head around and understand what the hell he's talking about, type of stuff. And he's at a robotics company, but, he's out there, he's employee number 15 or something, and he joined a bunch of ex-Waymo engineers, all these guys with PhDs from Carnegie Mellon, MIT, that really have built the core of autonomous driving. And that's a very hard thing to replicate based on what he was trying to do. And so that's probably the right place for him to be. And so I think it's just really looking and understanding, where's a good place for me to be for what I'm looking to do. And really just asking yourself honest questions. And I think that's also, as you're talking to people who've been working a while or in the industry, trying to get people who will give you honest answers from that. And then just having, being bold enough to go make those moves and maybe get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. For the undergrads, do you think San Francisco Bay Area is a place they should think deeply about?
I think it completely depends on what you're looking to do. I think it's there's obviously a lot going on there. San Francisco depends on what you want to do. Whether that's certain industries is probably a terrible move, right? I think, and there's probably better markets. I think Dallas is a great place, for example, if you want to focus on the enterprise stuff, right? You want to be where the big businesses are. We have way more big businesses now, in terms of, traditional businesses here. Or if you wanted to be in energy, Houston is probably a better place to be than San Francisco. If you want to be, you're a PhD in artificial intelligence of some kind, Silicon Valley is going to be pretty tough to be. Boston, it could be an interesting place. But you also have humanoid robot companies out of Austin now, right? And like with, we're certainly getting a lot of people, and Elon Musk moves to Texas, like there's certainly a lot that's going to follow that, and you're going to get talent, you're going to get, those kind of cores, coming up in other places. So you always have your primary and secondary markets, but I think it's just a matter of what you want to do, and then where you can get an opportunity to get started. Some people start here, and then maybe move there, or the other way around.
What advice do you have for people in the audience here if they want to build on an AI idea? Where should they start?
Yeah, I think if you're wanting to start a company, my kind of personal thoughts on this are that, you want to start a company that solves a problem, right? Like that's the easiest way to start a company that's going to be successful. Anyway, you can start a company with whatever you want, like, it may or may not work out, but your biggest odds of success are if you solve a real problem for real customers, something they're willing to pay for. It's a pain point, it's a vitamin, it's a painkiller, not a vitamin type of thing, where it's not like something people go, oh, that's interesting, that's neat, wow, good luck, So I think really challenging, like, the problem domain is still where I always want to start. And I think people spend way too little time on the problem domain and thinking about it, and far too much time on the solutioning. People see what they think they understand the problem, they don't really understand the problem that deeply, and immediately want to start building something around it. I think that you should spend way more time around the problem domain way before understanding the real pain points of your buyers and marketers. If you're coming out of industry and you understand that deeply, you've got already done that homework, so operating in areas that you understand uniquely, you're uniquely suited to. That founder market fit is still more important than ever. And so I think just moving into the more like AI question is understanding. One is like, is this still a relevant business in this day and age of AI? Because there's some businesses that are just it's like being a professional toll booth operator. It's like, hey, we don't really need those anymore. We can do with cameras, right? There's not really a future in that. Will AI displace this or enhance it, and how so? I think those are the big things I would think about. If I were starting a business in the AI area, it's just it's looking at like what market dynamics have changed, what technological changes have been here, where's the arc of that likely going, and what does that look like for the problem I'm trying to solve.
Right, and I think right now there are a lot of tools that can help you build an idea quickly. So kind of experimenting, like spend some time on the problem, deeply think about it, experiment, find some insights.
Yeah, and it depends too on what type of business you're doing. If you wanted to try an e-commerce company or something, and you wanted to sell T-shirts, you can get on Lovable and probably build, Shopify and build a site pretty quickly and test that out. Right? If you want to compete with SpaceX and build a rocket, it's not so simple to do that stuff.
Fair enough. All right, Scott, so to wrap things up, we're going to do like a rapid lightning round, one answers, no overthinking. Han Solo from Star Wars or Captain Picard?
Han Solo.
All time. Buc-ee's or 7-Eleven?
Buc-ee's, they have way better food. No, it's not going to be popular.
Austin or Dallas?
Dallas.
Taco boots or corporate quarter zip?
Definitely boots.
There you go. Awesome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks a lot for joining us. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Shilpa and Scott, for y'all's insightful comments on the AI world. We really appreciate all being here. To express a token of the Chamber's gratitude, we've got a few gifts for y'all before y'all leave the stage. Thanks again, Scott. Well, to round out our day today, we saved the best for last. So I'd like to introduce our tech C-suite panel. So these are folks, I know you guys have heard from different folks in the different spaces today, but these are folks that are in the leadership world, in their tech organizations, bringing insights on what that looks like from a leader organizational standpoint. So please help me in welcoming our moderator, Sarah Rodriguez with PwC, and our panelists, Andrew Kim, the VP and CTO of Capital One Sales, Naveen Butla, the VP of Enterprise for DFW Airport, and Sridhar Bairam, the EVP of Solutions Engineering for Kintelli. Due to an urgent matter, Simon Parkinson, who's the CIO of Coca-Cola, couldn't be here today. He was supposed to be on the panel. So with that said, I would love to welcome you all to stage, and with that, we'll kick it off. Thank you very much for being here.
Served as the U.S. Chemicals leader in the last 5 years, and about 10 months ago, I transitioned into full-time focusing on private equity go-to-market for native AI. So all day, every day, as I talk to my clients now, I'm thrilled to moderate this panel. So we're going to start. We'll just kick off by having everybody introduce themselves. Let's just start.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all for being here. My name is Naveen Butla. I'm the Vice President of Enterprise Data and Analytics at DFW Airport. Hopefully all of you have flown through there recently. So I've been at the airport for 16 years. I lead our air service related research, analytics, pricing, parking, commercial strategy, enterprise data governance, as well as our AI strategy. Been in the aviation industry all my life. Prior to DFW, I was at Sabre Airline Solutions. I'm sure a lot of you here are familiar with that. Been on the airline, airport, aviation space for almost 30 years now. So really, data, analytics, technology, OR, and of course AI.
Hi everyone, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me now? I can hear myself too. Hi everyone, my name is Sindhu. I lead the tech division in Capital One for Capital One Auto Sales Business. I have been in the industry for 25 plus years. I started out as an engineer, and then for the last 10 years I have been leading different tech divisions in Capital One for various businesses. In my career, I have seen many tech transformations, but nothing like AI tech transformations. So I'm very excited about what's happening in the industry, and I'm really looking forward for this conversation today.
Thanks everyone. My name is Sridhar. I had solutions engineering and consulting for Kintelli. I won't tell you how experienced or old I am, but just say that when Windows 95 came in, it was exciting for me. So that's a proxy for my experience. What I do essentially is work with clients across the tech space, but also core industries, and help them solve their business problems through technology. Right? And And now AI is not just an organizational shift, as I see it, as some of the speakers who have come here before us have said, it's a civilizational shift. So it's interesting to see how that transformation is going to happen.
All right, so we're going to start our first question around leadership through technology change. You're in the hot seat. So you're going to go first, and we'll go down the middle. So tech disruption is similar to AI often create uncertainty in organizations. How do you lead teams through periods of rapid change, specifically AI change?
Thanks, Sarah. So I'll say, of course, like Sriya mentioned, I remember Windows 95 as well. And I'll say, I tell my kids, I think there's been like 3 really disruptive, transformational changes in the last 30 years, at least in my opinion. We had the internet in the 90s, the iPhone in the 2000s, and I think AI is now upon us. I'll say, from a adoption standpoint, it seems like every day you wake up, there's something new out there. So the challenge for us at DFW is not just adopting those new technologies and leaning into AI solutions, but also bringing the organization along. It's not, it doesn't serve anybody too well if there's just only a small group that's dabbling in AI. Really, for us, it's about having organizational change. So to that effect, we are heavily investing into data literacy programs, change management, to make sure everybody across the organization is having access to these phenomenal tools, but also being trained in terms of how to use them, because you could go down a rabbit hole and all kinds of tools and probably spend more time than you would have otherwise. So to me, it's how do you make sure you're changing the mindset of the organization to be able to handle such rapid change. And the couple of ways we are doing that is through a formal literacy program and just getting the organization to really understand the value they can get from a transformational technology like AI.
Plus what Naveen said. Look, I believe that people don't struggle with change. They struggle with not knowing what is going to happen to them. They struggle with the feeling that they will become irrelevant. So as leaders, we need to be setting clear direction for them. We need to have a strategic vision in our mind. We need to be setting clear direction for them. We need to be not giving into the hype or fear of AI. We need to be very clear about, hey, what are the different zones in the organization? What are the green, yellow, red zones? Green meaning that you can go ahead with the AI solutions. Yellow means that maybe you need to check a little bit more. Red means you can completely forbidden, you cannot even touch this area with AI. Whatever that means for the organization. Then to Naveen's point, literacy is very important, but the problem is that these tools are very, very powerful. So before you allow them into your organization, there are so many risk governance activities that you need to do. But you could be setting up things like learning labs, where you set up laptops which are not connected to your network. You could be paying subscription for various of your employees. They can learn the tools without you getting into the hurry of implementing them in your organizations. You could encourage hackathons. There are a lot of activities that you could do to actually make sure that associates are learning these new technologies that are coming so fast, almost like every day. And the third, which is I think in my opinion is extremely important, do not leave the non-tech people behind. Like we as tech leaders are not going to be successful if we leave the other people behind. Whether it is like a business leader or like a product leader, design leader, even like administrative job family, we are more into this AI tech transformation. So I personally believe that it is our job to bring the whole organization along. Otherwise, we will do the tech work and we will get stuck because we wouldn't be able to move forward because those guys are slow. So it is in our own interest to make sure that we bring everybody along.
Thanks. I'll take a slightly different viewpoint on this. A lot of companies that I work with, have a severe case of FOMO. Right? And that FOMO is driven by three things. Fundamentally, it's uncertainty. Uncertainty around what if I get left behind, right, as a company? What if my competitors leave from me? That's one uncertainty. The second uncertainty is the rapid pace of change. GenAI, when ChatGPT 2.5 came in, it was huge. But then, just a few months later, while people are doing this pilot, the way that we do work in the age of AI. So what does this look like? What is my organization? We have a way of doing things, have done things a certain way. How is it going to get changed? So, and what happens to people, obviously, right? So those are driving change. But fundamentally, the way that we bring in change from a leadership perspective, that process has not changed. Be transparent with our people, framework of what we are prioritizing, because attention from different use cases for AI from different business units, and fundamentally give people the tools and the literacy to be able to make decisions, bring people along, as you rightly mentioned, right? So get the whole audience. People can understand change. People get worried if they do not understand the decision behind that change or how it is being.
Okay, so we'll pivot to AI strategy, and you're all gonna put this into you. Many organizations are investing heavily in AI. How do you know if these investments are delivering an ROI, and how are you measuring results, either cost or benefit side? For you.
Well, the math hasn't really changed. So ultimately, it's all about, are you adding more enterprise value than what you are consuming? So even with AI, frankly, the math hasn't really changed. The problem is that do we really understand the cost? It is just not about the cloud cost, GPU cost, model cost, API cost. It is much more than that. It is a whole transformation cost. You need to redesign your workflows, you need to redesign your governance, you need to redesign how we work together. So the cost adds up. We need to make sure that we have a good understanding of what our cost is. And then on the other side, on the revenue side, you could actually look at multiple factors. We could look at, are we really making a change in the business outcomes? Measurable business outcomes. Is the revenue going up? Is the business really growing? Is the conversion rate high? What it means for your business? And look for scale. If it is just like marginal change, then it is probably not because of AI. With AI, if it is really working, you should see a step change. The second thing that you could be looking for is productivity. Is the productivity per associate really going up? And again, look for scale. And with AI, it is very easy to have pockets of productivity. For example, like in technology organizations, you bring up you implement any code assistant, not any, if you implement any relevant code assistant tool, then you will see productivity going higher with the engineers. But the question is, are the features getting shipped faster? So you need to look at those things. The third would be, is the associate experience becoming better? Or the customer experience becoming better? Is the risk getting reduced? You might want to look at that. Mythos is a great example that Anthropic introduced. Most companies don't even have access to it. Look what it has done to cybersecurity, completely changed the game. So AI is very powerful. We definitely need to understand all the costs and what are the different outcomes that we are actually going for. Once we have that, then the math really hasn't changed.
So I'm actually going to go to different questions here, unless you have something you want to add to that.
I'll just add one thing. It's not always the hard dollars that look at ROI and the return on investment, right? That return is more than the hard dollars. There is, as you said, productivity, but what does productivity really mean? Are you able to do certain business processes or outcomes much faster? But you'll have to zoom out a little bit as well and look at it from an organizational perspective. What does any change really mean for us as an organization? It's not just the financial dollar versus anything.
All right, Naveen, what are the conceptions executives have about AI adoption?
How long do you have today? So I'll say, with AI in the news, in our faces every day, I think it's very natural for our leadership and executive management to not have, kind of FOMO. And so the question is, are we using AI and are we using it enough? And are we getting value? So I'd say a misconception from my perspective is the speed at which executives think we can deploy AI safely, responsibly, and at scale. It's great to do a quick POC or have a little lab, do a prototype. That's awesome. But really, then the challenge is how do you scale that without having the right guardrails, governance in place. It puts a lot at risk. And especially I'll speak from an airport perspective, safety and security is everything to us. There's no compromise there. And so that is a challenge for us as kind of tech and AI leaders, which is to educate our leadership to say, hey, yeah, there's AI is transformational, but it needs to be deployed safely and responsibly. And the other thing I'll say is, at the end of the day, I think one thing that hasn't changed is data, and good data is everything. Whether you have AI or not, data is the foundation. And we at the airport have invested a lot over the last few years, even well before AI came about, into our foundational data platforms, governance, and so going through a medallion structure. So the good part is we've invested a lot there. The not so good part is now with AI, everybody is looking to, hey, can we have something tomorrow? And yes, we can have something, but that would be something that might be a prototype, and we'll really still need to do some of that groundwork behind the scenes, which actually counterintuitively is going to help you scale AI much more rapidly. But a misconception, I would say, is everybody seems to be using AI, so why can't we right now?
I think the only thing that I would add to that is just totally plus one to what Naveen said. Many executives or leaders, they think of AI as a sole cost-cutting thing or an efficiency. And I'm guilty of that too. So when we start out, we say that, hey, how can we cut costs faster? How can we become more efficient? How can we automate this thing? We ask all these questions. Obviously, we have to worry about cost at the end of the day we are in business. But cost cannot be the whole strategy. And to your earlier point, Shidhar, cost cannot be the whole strategy. The real value of AI is not in doing the work that we do today cheap. It is in doing things that we were not able to do before because of scale or because they were impractical or they were impossible. We need to use our imagination to think bigger. How can we compete with our customers? How can we provide better service to how can we compete with our competitors? How can we create capabilities that will help us create more around our business? I know it sounds like a dream, but once you use your imagination to how you can leverage AI to solve these bigger, bolder problems, then the real opportunities of AI open up. So if I say that what is the biggest misconception, like in my mind, again, me being guilty, just thinking of it as a pure cost play is a misconception.
I'll add one point to that. So, many organizations think of AI rollouts as another technology adoption. It's not. It's fundamentally changing the way organizations work, right? So, it's not a technology rollout. Great pilots doesn't mean that it will last forever. Bad pilots doesn't mean it's useless. So, being able to be intentional about what you're trying to do and then bring in change from within the organization, from within the core areas of your business, that's what will make you more successful. The misconception among a lot of executives is it's focused. It starts as a technology organization, it runs as a technology organization, and dies as a technology organization. application. It's not a lot of there's a graveyard of great pilots out there, right? But what pilots succeed is when you get the business, the people on the ground, the people in the field, using and adopting it as part of their daily workflow. So that's the change that we need.
So I might step out of my role of moderator and add one thing building into on what you're saying. I was in a meeting with our chief economist a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the AI race, and he made a point. He said the losers in the AI race will be the ones with a lack of creativity.
Yep.
And I thought that was really well said, and it builds on what you said. Absolutely agree. All right, so we're going to come to you and talk a little bit about AI risks. So as your organization grows their AI footprint, what risks and guardrails do you see impacting the business and the overall landscape, either in the U.S. or abroad?
Sorry, I actually missed it.
Yeah, we put that in the line, so.
Yeah. I think in my mind, speed is one of the things. So all across the world, how countries, organizations, or people, the speed at which they embrace AI. On one hand, you can be very slow. You are waiting for perfect clarity before you move forward, although the competitors are moving forward. AI compounds on learning. So if you are being very slow, if you are hesitant, that hesitation can actually be a real big competitive disadvantage. On the other hand, if you are moving too fast, then you could have other problems on hand. You may not have right governance in place and you could get in trouble, or I could get in trouble. So speed, just moving at the right speed, with the right amount of urgency, with the right discipline, is one of the risks I really see across the world. And the second is about the responsible AI. So what does it really mean to have responsible AI? What it means is that when we introduce AI-based solutions for our customers, we are very transparent about where we are using AI, what we are using it for, how can they opt out, how can they escalate. Like we are being extremely transparent. Tomorrow our AI solution is if it is in the newspapers or whatever is the digital form of newspapers nowadays, then we are not embarrassed by it being there. We are proud of it. And then even the regulators, when we work with the regulators, any non-tech person should be able to explain to the regulators how we arrive at the decision that we make. Now, with the nature of AI being probabilistic in many of the solutions that we create, that creates another challenge. So we need to make sure that we are ready for everything. And that, I think, is going to be one of the biggest challenges across the world in AI adoption.
Anything to add? And then just give everybody a heads up, we're going to open for Q&A if you want to be thinking about if you have a question.
Yeah, sure. I'll just say I totally agree with everything Indu said. But yeah, the risks are out there, right? So I mean, I'm sure some of you heard the story of Air Canada a couple of years back when the chatbot went ahead and promised their customer a certain fare because it was hallucinating. And then there was a lawsuit. And initially, Air Canada said, hey, that was our chatbot, and we are not responsible for it. But then the court ruled that everything, has to be owned by the company. So that's a classic example where you let things run wild out there. You really got to put guardrails. And for us at the airport, like I said, safety and security is everything. Now when I hear agentic AI and agents, it's also cool. But man, I grew up in the 80s. And the only agent I knew that was always doing something crazy out there was James Bond. So we're coming to terms with what all of this really truly means for all of us. And one last thing I'll say is, it's great that AI and agentic AI and all of these are evolving rapidly, but the real challenge is the legal guardrails, the governance, the congressional oversight. Those rules and guidelines are years away. They need to catch up. The technology is moving way faster than the guardrails and governance are. And to me, that is the biggest risk.
Q&A, if there should be at least one microphone, if not two, traveling around. If you have any questions for him. Mr. North, please take the first one. We're happy sitting in silence.
We left everybody speechless.
All right, we got one in the back here. I don't know where my microphone is. Is energy the biggest challenge to building data centers?
The answer is yes. Energy underpins everything that modern civilization depends on, from plumbing to electricity to everything. So energy is going to be a severely limiting factor. Now that we have entered into the age of metered agents or metered AI, it's going to be even more expensive. There is going to be conflict when building more energy providers or spaces like for the data centers and so on versus other existential things like you need agriculture, you need places for people to build houses and so on. So there is going to be conflict, but it is probably the single most important factor in determining how much AI goes. And we heard Michael talk about, I don't know, talk about trillions, but that's where the trillions are.
And that is why, frankly, if you could just add to what Sridhar said, that is why you see the data centers being built in scale, not built. We are talking about building data centers in space. We are talking about becoming better at nuclear reactor plants so that we can have energy more than what we have today that is provided by solar or power grids and whatnot. Like we wouldn't have those things going on if we didn't know that energy was the biggest problem. It definitely is.
And I'll just say one quick thing from an aviation standpoint. For years and years, the aviation industry was looked at as kind of the villain of carbon emissions, carbon footprint. And I'll tell you, with AI now, we are the background. There's no comparison. So.
Hi, my name is Sanjay Kuluvalo. I actually have an AI podcast. And building on that question of energy, I sometimes take a contrarian view. If you look at the way the AI foundational models are constructed in terms of embedding, and you're doing n-squared comparisons. So if you have 1 million comparisons in the context window, go to 2 million squared, that's a quadratic scaling. So I think it's a way the models are constructed, and something else has to come down the road. We had an episode where they're using living neurons for AI processing instead of NVIDIA chips, much more energy efficient. It acts like a neuron, so you don't have that. So the energy problem will go away. That leads to an existential threat down the road. But what do you think in terms of the way we architect fundamental AI needs to change?
Wants to take it?
Okay, I guess I'll give it a shot. Yeah. So, I think everything is very new. So, I expect that over the period of time, many more versions of the model will emerge. So, we have already started talking about like a model on the edge, or like small model, large model. We are talking about like model in the cloud, model in the we have started talking about like a lot of different things. So if I were to predict what is going to happen in the future, we will figure out a way to create faster, smaller, specialized models for the use cases that we have. Like if I were to guess what is going to happen in the future.
Yeah, to address your question as well, and we'll talk about what you said. you can make your chips more efficient, you can have more efficient algorithms and models and so on, but at some point you will hit a threshold or a glass ceiling. And it may not be non-linear growth and energy dependence, but it will definitely have significant energy dependence that is continuing. Unless, of course, we invent a completely new way of running AI or even defining what is AI, quantum computing, for example, using more liquid cooler cores and so on. So the cost of energy has to be paid somewhere, whether it's an energy efficient design or whether you are simply putting all of your nuclear and other energy into it. So there's a direct equation. Now, what are the variables of that equation remains to be seen.
Hello, my name is Anya. I just want to say it was so enlightening to hear you guys speak. And Sarah, you're a great moderator. Shout out from PwC. Yes. I had a question. As an undergrad, I'm going into my second year at NYU, and with all the way that AI is changing even education, what are some characteristics or you think experience that newer employees of you guys have that you feel like is able to make them thrive? Because now everything is changing, and I feel like people are less like, oh, I'm willing to learn, and more skill-based to just going into it. So just what are some characteristics that you think undergrads or even recent graduates should be building now?
Start with this. Yeah, all of us on the stage here, we are leaders of companies, but we are also parents, right? So our kids are graduating or about to graduate, or so this is also a topic that is very close to heart for us. I would say that even for mid-career professionals, entry level, the concept or the paradigm doesn't change. Use, adopt, learn, modify AI in whatever forms you can. You cannot get you either do it or you get left behind. Right? So that it is find ways in which the human aspect of work still remains in terms of being comfortable with ambiguity, in terms of being able to make judgments or decisions under uncertain situations. Understanding the strategic data, for example, if you're a CS graduate, look at system architecture, look at how applications work together from an architectural standpoint to serve the needs of the business and how it operates. So a code can be written by an AI, but unless a human determines how it is going to interact with various parts of the system, that's going to be extremely difficult. So I would, and I'm advising my daughter as well, saying, don't shy away from AI, adopt it, use it, enable it, and then make sure decision making, human decision making still remains and oversight remains.
Plus what to what she just said. Anna, I met your mom yesterday. She's the sweetest person in the whole world, and I first started following her Instagram account because she asked me to. Plus completely what she just said. AI fluency, that is, if I were to say one thing, that would be it. Keep doing what you're doing, but you have an advantage. You're gonna be AI natives. So just keep building on that fluency. And then frankly, we can't predict what is going to happen in the future, but if we were to guess, AI fluency is the thing that is going to be helpful.
Yeah, I'll just say a couple of things. Like Sridhar mentioned, my son's gonna graduates actually today. He goes to college in the fall. He's going to do computer science. And one thing I tell him is, AI is changing and computer science, everything's changing, but focus on the fundamentals, right? If you got that strong, in this case, for example, a strong math background or statistics background or a computer science background, focus on the fundamentals because that will never change. So just as an example, yeah, you might use AI and neural networks and everything that you guys do, but more than just calling that routine or that function, really understand what are the hidden layers? What are the weights going into that? Because I think in the future, yeah, you'll have AI doing the work for you, but you still need the human to tell you whether the AI is right or not. And I think that's the transition. And focusing on the fundamentals, the nuts and bolts, will really help you have that kind of that understanding. And then one other thing I'll just say is, I haven't seen a passionate, warm, caring robot yet, right? So when you're building a story and conveying that to an audience and making a case, it is the human that's doing that. And there's no better storyteller than a human being. So to be able to focus on those fundamentals, so you know that, inside out, and then being able to translate that into, a compelling story is something that I think what can ever do.
Well said. So we are technically at time, unless there's somebody dying to ask a question.
I think we've got just 2 more questions, Sarah.
Hey, as long as you're-
Yeah, I think if the crowd's engaged, if you guys are okay with it, and we get some questions, maybe we can do a few more just to be more dynamic with the audience. So we've got one right here, and then we've got a few more.
Yeah, hi, this is Pankaj Trivedi with the License Group. Thank you all for being here, really enjoyed it. The one question I do have is, it's always been an issue for business, but what creates trust in digital banking?
What is the question?
Yeah, what was the last part? What creates trust?
What creates trust in digital banking?
Well, like I said, I'm in banking, so I guess I can answer it.
Yeah, Andy's gonna answer.
I think treating customer data as your own data and then making sure that everything is protected is one of the biggest things in giving trust. Like you cannot break that trust. Obviously, you need to provide like other things, customer service, everything. Everybody is digital nowadays. You need to make sure that you have good website, app, you are meeting the customer wherever they are, but everybody provides that. So you need to make sure that you have good customer experience, you are learning about the customer problem before they identify it, you are securing their data, you are actually caring for the customer as your own, it kind of sounds bad, but like family members, children, like things like that. That is what creates trust in banking. That's when people will start with digital and then making sure that they're banking.
Okay. Yeah.
Good evening. Fantastic panel, great discussion. Sorry we couldn't get much more of an audience from you all, but appreciate your insight. Nowadays, everyone is talking about AI. Trying to figure out what to do with it, struggling with it, etc. But isn't AI yesterday's story? Because just today, government has talked about investing $2 billion in quantum computing. I mean, it is becoming more of a reality. And if we think AI is going to be tough, we ain't seen nothing yet. So I would love to hear your perspectives on quantum computing, because as we heard from other speakers today, AI is more revolutionary than anything that we have seen before. But I'll come back to that point I made just now, that you ain't seen nothing yet. Because quantum computing is going to make everything, right, so transparent from the perspective of bitcoins, right? I mean, no more bitcoins will be secure, and cybersecurity will be different. So I would really love to hear from you how quantum computing is going to impact industry, businesses, specifically your business. Thank you. Long question, but I did hear the word quantum.
Let's start and maybe we can have their perspectives. So I think of quantum computing as attaching a rocket engine to a car, right? So AI is revolutionizing, if AI is revolutionizing how transportation happens, then quantum computing is only going to accelerate that particular piece. And I think it all boils down to the want Skynet, but you want Matrix. Just joking. But there is definitely how do we balance the rapid use of quantum computing and and applying it to AI challenges as well. For example, if you take cancer research, as Michael was talking earlier, quantum computing is only going to take that AI piece that is already running at scale, running at billions of transactions per second, tokens per second, and going to multiply and amplify it in so many ways that all of your solutions are going to have significant shortened times for the resolution. That will create new problems, right? So for every solution that you bring in, there are going to be 100 more problems that are coming in. And I don't think the cycle of problems, innovation, and solution is going to end. But quantum computing is as much a shift in what we see today from a technology perspective as AI is doing. But it is only going to accelerate. So think of it as a continuously accelerating machine.
Let's start to that. AI is not the last technology transformation or shift that we're going to see. The quantum computing is also not going to be the last one. So it has been happening for centuries. It will keep happening. The transformation brought on by the new innovation that we have in the world. So plus what she just said, quantum is going to be a huge accelerator of the good, bad, and the ugly.
And I'll just say, just to echo that, I think it's really, adapting to everything that's coming through, right? So, like you said, for centuries, we find ways to adapt this new technology, quantum, whatnot. I think what's key is just going to be making sure that we as a community, as a society, are having those strong foundations so we can keep adapting.
One more, Sarah. All right, let's do it.
Appreciate your insights a lot. Thank you so much. One quick question is, you mentioned not to leave the non-technical people behind, not just in our organizations, but can you have some suggestions on real life that we can implement, either at our organizations or at grassroots level? How can we get people in AI? Because most of them end up treating it like a Google engine, just like a search engine. So helping them understand the difference and what can we do to bring the masses?
I can start. So I think it depends on what kind of business are you in. So for example, like I lead the technology organization. So obviously there is like engineering organization that I lead. That recipe is pretty simple. We are so much closer to AI. But then there are ancillary jobs like designers and product managers. So we can make sure that we are bringing them along, making sure that designers are getting tools like Figma, Make, or whatever. Our product managers are leveraging tools that are available like Claude Code or Claude Cowork or Gemini, like whatever is available to them in the organization. Then we can also go beyond them, like business leaders. Frankly, everybody is on their own AI journey. So I wouldn't be surprised that even your colleague business leaders are not really there yet. Nobody's gonna say publicly that, hey, I don't understand AI frankly. So you could help them come through the journey. You could give some use cases to them. You can offer to have like 101 and 102 classes with them, like maybe a couple of hour sessions so that they can really practice, get their feet wet, understand how the things are happening. They will appreciate it. Personally for me, I actually led a couple of sessions for administrative assistant families, something that I would never even think about. But I didn't even realize that we have to care about the admins who are like helping us day in, day out, so that they can understand how can they use AI in their own job families. So as leaders, it is our duty to bring everybody along in the organization. They will be thankful and we will be faster.
Okay, I think with that we're going to close so we can let you guys get out of here at some point. Unless you guys have something to say super fast.
No, I was just going to say, to that, related to that, we just launched an AI 101 training for all employees in the airport. So it's really, how do you look at AI more than just a Google search bar and start to rethink how you do business?
this environment is unless AI is democratized to the largest extent possible, it's not going to be a successful organization in the long run.
All right, so Naveen, Indu, and Shadar, thank you for your time. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you so much. Thank you for having us here.
Well, thank you all again, Sarah, for bringing everybody together. Indu, Sridhar, Naveen, thank you all so much. As a token of our appreciation, if y'all can stay on stage, we'll just get a group picture with you really quick, and we'll give you all a quick gift.
And before everybody leaves, we've got networking outside, so please help yourself to more food, some coffee. Feel free to hang back, but thank you again, everybody, for coming.